personally pronouncing for years, fueled by their governor, who was all for it until now he suddenly isn't. Suddenly everybody, it seems, wants to say it was all nothing to do with me, this woke crap. Perhaps the biggest thing that's changed in the past 50 years, though, is actually nothing, 50 days, is nothing to do with executive orders or diplomatic chess games. It's the total collapse of the insanity that got Trump re-elected in the first place. We'll debate all this. I'm joined by the host of the Rubin Report, Dave Rubin, the former Bernie 2020 National Press Secretary and host of Bad Faith Podcast, Brianna Joy Gray, commentator Emily Austin, and the host of The Social Contract with Joe Walsh, former candidate for president. Joe Walsh, welcome to all of you. An appropriately stellar panel for this momentous day in history. Dave Rubin, it's only been 50 days. Can we all agree it feels like 50 years?
Yeah, well, 50 years of success. I mean, you just laid out 10 bullet points that are pretty freaking fantastic. I don't need to repeat all of them, but I don't even know that you mentioned the border or the deportations. There is so much goodness happening in America. And by the way, that clip that you just showed of Trump, where he's even admitting there's going to be a little pain point here. You may remember during the election that Elon admitted that as well, that as we go in and hack away at the deep state, at these ridiculous budgets and criminal negligence that I would say that has abused we the people, the taxpayer who are funding all of this. As we do this, there's going to be some pain points. So I'm not sitting here telling you that everything is absolutely great. Egg prices are a little high. It's true, although you might want to look into the Biden administration that killed about 100 million chickens right before they left office. But the point is that we are leaning into being a great country again. We are leaning into being the world's leader again. We are allowing the American people to do more with their money and not have this endless deep state, administrative state, blob, whatever you want to call it, swamp, just run their lives. And I think most people know it, and that's why the left has just been left with nothing. So Gavin is pretending he had nothing to do with pronouns. Gavin himself has tweeted out Latinx. Your people can check it right now. Fact, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, Dave, before we go to the others, the thing that would slightly concern me if I was a pro-Trumper American would be there's a new poll out today. It shows Trump's approval rating is quite significantly down now on Inauguration Day, notably amongst young men who turned out in massive numbers to vote for him, notably because of concerns about the economy. Plus, the stock market is, I wouldn't say tanking, but it's certainly taken a big hammering in the last week or so. He's got to be careful, Trump. It's all very well saying, look, there's going to be some pain. But if people are already starting to fret about the economy and that gathers momentum, that could become quite problematic for the guy who said the good times are coming.
Well, it could. Of course it could. If the economy does not do well, if it trips up, if the tariff thing backfires, of course, right? I would answer that as honestly as I would answer any other question. But I would say that largely what he has done is put us in this transitional period. So I personally do not know anyone that supported Donald Trump that has peeled away their support at this point. I actually do know a few people, and there are plenty of people, you can see them online, people like Stephen A. Smith who did not vote for Donald Trump, who basically said, I don't know that he says he's a supporter, but basically kind of not been hysterical, even someone like Bill Maher. So I don't know anyone that's going in the other way. That poll may be right, but I would also say that might have a little something to do with the fact that the left has so imploded that some of the energy that drove Trump may be dissipating, because as the left's lunacy disappears, the need for the destructor Donald Trump is different. This is where he needs to be statesman Donald Trump. I think he's doing it.
All right. Joe Walsh, are you as jubilant about the first 50 days of Trump Part 2?
No, I agree with Dave's assessment of the Democrats. They're as helpless, hopeless, and feckless as ever. Look, Trump is Trump. He's doing what he said he was going to do. We're 7 weeks in, and there's a battle in the free world between NATO, our alliance, our allies, Europe on one side and Putin on the other side. And the president of the United States has clearly put America on the side of Putin. I find that troubling. We talk, and last thing I'll say, Piers, we talk about the economy. By all indicators, Trump was given the strongest economic recovery since COVID. You got to break a few eggs to make an omelet. I don't know what kind of omelet he's making we talk about the tariff thing. Today's Monday. Are tariffs on? Are they off? I think the chaos economically of the first 7 weeks, Trump and not knowing what he's doing with his tariffs, I think have pissed off and confused everybody and has begun to damage the economy he was given.
Okay, I mean,
we had a president who had dementia before him, so that's a problem. And then to say that we're aligned with Russia right now is not true. We're trying to end an endless war, a war that has no ending, that nobody seems to be able to say, how many tanks does Ukraine need? How many ships do they need? How much money do they need? How many planes do they need? What do they need to win this war? Nobody can tell you that because they can't win this war. That's just reality. Putin's got nukes. So trying to negotiate a settlement and get to peace, I think is a good thing. But the idea that we've aligned ourselves with Russia.
I've not heard Donald Trump align himself with Russia against NATO or the West or even Ukraine. I've heard him get pretty rough with President Zelensky, which many people didn't like, but it may be because he feels resistance from Zelensky to actually get around a table with Putin, which it might well be the case. He may not really want to, but he's probably going to have to. Emily, let me bring Emily in here. I mean, Emily.
No, I just want to mention.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, welcome back, first of all. Welcome back, Emily. First of all.
Thank you.
It's always good to be here. And then, please, the stage is yours. Piers Morgan Uncensored is now proudly independent. If you like the show, we ask for only one thing. Subscribe on YouTube and follow Piers Morgan Uncensored on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Now let's get straight to the point. Support for today's show comes from a business focused on a critical issue: prosperity. US national debt is at crisis levels. Inflation has made life more expensive for everybody, and the stock market is precarious. It's enough to make anyone's financial future feel grim. So what is the solution? Well, a simple one is to opt out of the chaos and invest in something solid and reliable: physical gold and silver. And there's only one name you need to remember: American Hartford Gold. This company has earned the trust of thousands of customers with an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and glowing reviews you can see for yourself. They offer an incredible range of gold and silver bars and coins. They can be delivered directly to your door, or they'll help you set them up in a tax-advantaged gold IRA. First-class customer service makes the whole process simple, secure, and straightforward. American Hartford Gold is committed to getting the truth out there and giving you peace of mind in uncertain times. And if that wasn't enough, you'll get up to $15,000 worth of free silver when you make your first purchase and mention my name, Piers. So make the smart move. Call 866-692-2474 or text Piers, that's P-I-E-R-S, to 65532. That's 866-692-2474 or text Piers to 65532. All the details are in the description. Now on with the show.
Be back. And Joe, I just want to go off of what you said about the economy, because the truth is we're not coming off of the best economy since COVID or whatever you wanted to call it. But in fact, we're still facing the consequences of what Joe Biden did from his first day in office as president. And now I don't want to repeat the repetitive rhetoric of, it's Biden's fault, because Trump is in the process of fixing it. But the truth is, because of his actions, and the prime example is cutting off the pipeline in Canada, the oil pipeline, and skyrocketing oil prices, which then inevitably leads to every single price skyrocketing in the United States. We're still coming off of that. We're still coming off of consumers' lack of confidence. Under Joe Biden, there were two what could possibly lead to world wars that broke out under America's weak leadership, that now consumers are spending very conservatively because we don't know what the trajectory looks like. Now under Trump, we're gaining our confidence back, but we are coming off of the worst economy because of Joe Biden. Now Trump doesn't have this magical wand that within the first 50 days of office he can fix it, but he's implementing the right policies on getting us on the path to fix it. And yes, there comes growing pains. Of course, it's not going to fix itself overnight, but we are coming off of the worst economy.
Well, I think, look, I would say on that, it wasn't the worst economy. Look, America's economy has actually outperformed pretty much everybody else's since the pandemic ended. So it's all a question of degree. I mean, compared to the UK's economy, America's been on fire the last few years. However, Trump has been persistent in saying it could have been doing a lot better, and now it's incumbent on him to actually prove that. Let me bring in Brianna, who's been waiting patiently here. I thought that Dave Rubin made a good point. That the thing we didn't mention in the first 50 days, there was so much we could have mentioned, was what's happened at the border, where it's demonstrable, massive, immediate success there. the number of people coming over the border illegally has been dramatically cut. I mean, do you as an American welcome that?
As an independent left populist, I think this conversation is exactly why we need a workers' party in this country. You opened, Piers, by mentioning that Trump seems to be admitting that there's going to be, quote, growing pains. It's not just an admission. Republicans have been telegraphing this and pointing specifically to Milei and Argentina as an example of the economic policy they want to pursue. This is not an accident, nor is it a consequence of inheriting Biden's economy, which I have no interest whatsoever to defend. But it is worth noting that Donald Trump is implementing an agenda that is purposefully throwing the country, if not into recession, then toward it. Because we have to ask ourselves the question of who he represents and who he is working for.
But what about my question?
At inauguration, there were $3 billion. There was a lot that was said. I'm sorry, Piers, if I could just respond to a couple of things.
Well, yeah, but I did ask you a straight question. I mean, you can come to the other stuff, but on that specific point about the southern border,
the point,
there is, I mean, to me, look, as somebody who is described as an exceptional alien on my immigration status to the United States, that's actually what you guys call me on my paperwork, who's gone through the laborious process of applying legally for a visa to enter the country and so on. You know, I've been horrified by the scale of illegal immigration under the Biden administration. It was completely out of control. Up to as many as 10 million people are believed to have come in illegally. And Trump, quite clearly, probably the most significant achievement, I would say, inarguable achievement in the first 50 days, has been he's stemmed this tidal wave of people coming over the border. And I'd simply ask you, as an American, do you welcome that? Are you pleased?
Yeah, what I welcome as an American is upholding the law, our immigration system, and a path to citizenship. The significant backlog of undocumented people in the country is not a consequence of border crossings, which, yes, of course, do spike in valley and did have a spike under the Biden administration, which is now more in a valley.
So you're pleased?
In part because of Trump's policies. Of course, that is the case. But we also need to look forward to whether or not the Trump administration is going to handle the millions of Americans who are waiting for a path towards citizenship. And that incentivizes those long waits, incentivizes people taking illegal means. But this is the fundamental question that I know it's very awkward for people to ask themselves because many of the very affluent people on this panel are implicated by it. Whose policy agenda is Trump pursuing when at inauguration he is backed by 3 billionaires, Elon Musk, Bezos, and Mark Zuckerberg? Why is it that we are talking about
Well, they are three of the most successful. Hang on. They are three of the most successful people in the history of planet Earth. I mean, do you have a sort of ideological problem with unbelievably successful people and
Piers.
Job creators in America from helping the president?
I would love to answer that question. I have an ideological problem with the idea that a billionaire, the richest man on earth, someone who is only recently an American citizen, spending almost $300 million to buy an election and advance his agenda, standing in front of the cabinet, as though he is the president of the United States of America and pushing policies like a tax cut that would raise taxes on the lower 50% of Americans while making a tax cut for the top 1%. When you have the very top 1%, fraction of 1%, standing in the room and advancing these policies, I think it's worth it for the American people to ask why the egg price conversation is talked about as though it's a footnote, why we're not talking about soaring housing costs, why nobody can afford the cost of education, why nobody can afford healthy food for their family, why nobody can afford car repairs, and why somebody like an independent Senator Bernie Sanders was going around the country talking about those things, turning out huge crowds in red districts that Donald Trump won.
Okay, Dave Rubin, your response.
It's so funny. You say Trump wants to advance his agenda.
Okay, actually, let Emily just say what she wants to say, then I'll come to you, Dave. Emily?
No, it's so funny how, Brianna, you just said that Elon Musk bought his way into the election to advance his agenda. Meanwhile, his agenda is to eliminate waste and fraud from the government, and he's been doing a superb job in doing so. And so far, the loudest opposition of what Elon is doing are quite literally the most guilty in indulging in this waste and fraud and waste of taxpayers' dollars. So it's ironic that you said that.
Okay, I want to play, Dave, a clip from SNL at the weekend mocking Elon, then get your response. Let's take a look.
So you two need to start acting like mature adults, okay? So let's begin with Marco.
Polo.
No, Elon. I'm trying to talk to Marco.
Polo. What is that? What's this?
Elon, you gotta listen to me, okay? Marco is a very important part of the team, and we all need to...
Phase 1 of my plan is complete. Ingratiate yourself to the president and take over the media. But was taking this job a bad idea? A lot of people seem to really hate me. My Tesla stock is crashing and my personal net worth just dropped by $100 billion.
Now, it was quite a funny sketch, I have to say, Dave. But is there a point there that Elon Musk might be getting some buyer's remorse about getting his way into the real seat of power in America, but actually now copping a lot of flack? Do you think he might be beginning to regret it?
I don't think so. I'll give them credit. The Austin Powers callback was kind of good, but look, the rest. Yes, is he a little autistic and like this is the day of autists now? Yeah, he is. Okay, part of it. That's also part of his success, actually. As for buyer's remorse, I don't think so at all. I mean, I just watched. We played it on my show this morning. I mean, just over the last couple of days, you know, he walks into the meeting with the entire cabinet saying that this is his words. He said, literally the greatest cabinet in American history. You know, this idea that successful people being part of the government is somehow bad, that people who build things, who send rockets to Mars and who build incredible things like, I don't know, the Amazon marketplace that allows you to get things at your house 3 hours later, that these people are all inherently evil. Someone like David Sachs, who's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, who's now heading up AI and crypto. These people are doing these jobs for either no money or virtually no money in their worlds because they care about America. Bobby Kennedy has said repeatedly that he has never seen a time in his life where more good, qualified people who do not need the headache of this. You think Elon wants the headache of having the Soros-funded protesters at his Tesla places like I saw this weekend in Miami? He doesn't want that, but I don't think he has any buyer's remorse. I think he is a deeply proud American who understands how great this country is, and it was heading off the cliff. So yeah, are there going to be pain points not only for the country but for him personally? Has it attacked his reputation? Is he going to not get invited to some of the elite parties? Yeah, but is he going to probably save the country in the meantime? I think so.
Joe Walsh, we've seen some. Well, hang on, Brianna. I'm just going to go to Joe. We've seen some tensions being reported. New York Times, I think, reported about Marco Rubio, excuse me, some tension there with Elon Musk and a big argument between them in the cabinet and so on. Look, you're going to get arguments between smart people in powerful positions. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I've followed politics long enough. But you've also got all of them in the cabinet are there because Donald Trump got elected, and they are therefore effectively elected officials in that sense. Elon is the outlier. He's the one that's just there as a kind of unofficial advisor to the president, but apparently with almost unlimited powers. Is that sustainable, or are you going to see a lot more tension creeping in between the official cabinet members and Elon?
Well, I don't know, Piers, how sustainable it is. I worry that it's not constitutional. And look, you're right. The cabinet members in Trump are going to reflect much more so than Elon, where the voters are. And a lot of what Elon and Doge have been doing, and nobody on this panel knows what Elon and Doge have been doing. Pierce, you don't, I don't. That's a problem. Hang on.
What do you mean? They tweet about it every day.
Hang on. We've seen a lot of stuff they're doing. Actually, they've been actually remarkably transparent. We've seen, for example, on USAID. We saw some alarming, ridiculous waste of money. So we are seeing what they're doing.
Pierce, we don't know. We have no accurate accounting of what's been cut. Emily, I think, talked about waste and fraud. There's been no Doge reporting on waste and fraud that's been cut. There's a reason why, and there over 100 lawsuits have been filed. Maybe I'm biased. I say this as a former member of Congress. Our founders made Congress the most powerful branch for a reason, because they feared a king. When I was a congressman, I would yell every time Obama picked up his pen and his phone and enacted an executive order. We're a million miles beyond that now. And a lot of this stuff is just fundamentally not constitutional. That should still matter.
But what about? But what has he cut?
All right, but Joe, what has he cut that you're not happy has been cut?
Just to put it in context, hang on,
Dave,
Joe,
I can't answer that.
Joe, I wanted Marco Rubio
Go ahead,
tweeted
please.
today about the USAID purge being complete. After a 6-week review, we are officially cancelling 83% of the programs at USAID. The 5,200 contracts that are now cancelled spent tens of billions of dollars in ways that did not serve and in some ways even harmed, he said, the core national interests of the United States. In consultation with Congress, we intend for the remaining 18% of programs we are keeping, approximately 1,000, to now be administered more effectively under the State Department. Now, there'll be a lot of Americans who say, good. If you've uncovered a load of tens of billions of dollars being squandered on stupid programs and you're going to cull them and the American taxpayer is the beneficiary, what's the bad news?
Two quick things, Piers. Again, USAID, most Americans have no freaking clue what it is. USAID is an independent agency. There's a reason why every cut that's been made supposedly to USAID has been taken to court, because Trump and Musk do not have the authority to just get rid of that agency. They don't. It's a separate agency made separate by an act of Congress. Same thing with the Department of Education. I'm not a fan of the Federal Department of Education, but Trump and Musk can't get rid of it, Pierce. Only Congress can. The Constitution's still got to
Piers,
matter.
can I interject?
Yeah, you
when he's
can,
done?
Emily, yeah.
So I want to also point out, of course, Congress has the highest power. And when they allowed for USAID to spend our tax-paying dollars to go to allocated groups, I'm sure what they didn't expect was millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars going to transgender choirs and DEI in Ireland and a lot of the waste that Elon Musk is now cutting out. So given that we have the clear proof that our money that Congress passed is going to things that we didn't approve of it going to, yes, by all means, you have the authority to undo it. And here's another thing I want to bring up. When I went to the Oval Office and Secretary Rubio was speaking to, the group of influencers who came, he was speaking about Doge and Elon Musk. Why? Because we wanted to know exactly what their agenda is. We wanted the transparency, and they gave it to us. He pointed out something that blew my mind, where he said he and Elon spoke that morning, and Secretary Rubio asked Elon, why did you target USAID first, and what's next? In which he said Social Security is next. He targeted USAID because when Elon said, I want to eliminate waste and fraud, they were the loudest opposition. And Elon thought to himself, well, why would you be opposed to saving taxpayer dollars? That's when he did his deep dive into USAID to see our money is going to garbage. And now you're questioning, well, what is Elon doing? He's going to go group by group, piece by piece, and start tackling all the waste and fraud. So the fact that you haven't seen the full scope of it yet is only because we're just getting started with this.
Right, and Brianna, I would say that what is clear is that the American people on this issue, on Doge, and the waste that's being exposed, they are in a big majority right behind the administration. So there are other polls that show them not as confident about other things, but on Doge, that seems to be a very popular thing.
I'm really glad my co-panelist pointed out that Social Security is next. And polls show that Republican voters also are overwhelmingly opposed to cuts to Social Security. The majority of Americans rely on Social Security to keep their
waste
elderly
and fraud.
Parents and relatives and loved ones from living on the street. And not to mention Medicaid, Medicare. These are some of the most popular policies in America that even Trump understands it's bad politics to put them on the chopping block. And that's why he ran away from those policies in the Bartolomeo Fox News interview just this week. But the reality is that that's exactly what he's going for. And the numbers that have been articulated by the Trump administration and Elon Musk for what he anticipates in terms of budget cuts cannot happen without significant cuts to programs exactly like Social Security. And this is why the earlier point that was made about millionaires and billionaires. I'm sorry, if I could just finish this point without interruption. This is why the earlier point about millionaires and billionaires who are running this government and why it is that we should be concerned about it is so germane. There was a 2014 Princeton study that showed that there is no relationship between what Americans want, what voters articulate in polls, and what actually gets passed in Congress, whether it's a Democratic Congress or a Republican Congress. And the reason is because oligarchs, billionaires have captured our government through lobbyists. There was a question asked on Fox News recently, why is Northern Virginia the most affluent place in America? And the implication was that it was because of government spending and government programs, when the reality is it's because that's where the lobbyists live. And that's where all of our government money is going. The instinct to want to look at where our tax dollars are being misdirected is the right one. But should we be skeptical of the fact that the literal richest person in the world and the number 2 and the number 3 and the number 4 are standing there telling you that the problem is the programs that are keeping your elderly loved ones sustained and not the military spending? The Pentagon budget is 3 times the budget of the Department of Education. Our military spending is more than the next 10 military spending of the next 10 countries beneath us combined. Elon Musk is a defense contractor himself, and that is why you're not going to see him talking about cuts to people like him who personally have hundreds of millions of dollars worth of wealth that they've gotten through government contracts. No, they want to throw your grandmother out of the hospital and your family members onto the street.
Okay, Dave, they want to throw your family into the street.
It's so boring and it's so thin. Yes, Elon's doing all of this to make more money. He was like, yes, I really need another yacht. I don't even know that he has a yacht. He doesn't. You're the guy who walks around in old ratty T-shirts. That's number one. Number two, let's try it this way. I would say, Brianna, in some sense, you're kind of directionally right in some of this stuff, but let's try it this way. First, as Emily pointed out, no one's talking about bringing down Medicaid and taking out these programs. They're talking about getting the waste and fraud out, which it is obvious. There are 150-year-olds that are getting benefits, 300-year-olds getting benefits.
That's not
get
true.
The waste and
and
fraud
you have to rely on lies like that to manufacture consent to cut a popular policy. That's a patent lie.
But no one's saying cut the policy. They're saying get the waste out of the policy.
David,
but let's try it a different way.
David,
I would be for lowering taxes on everybody. I would be for lowering taxes on absolutely everybody, so the government has less money to waste and spend on nonsensical things. I want you to keep more of your money. Do you want me to keep more of my money?
No, because you're a millionaire, Dave Rubin. I don't think you should keep more of your money, and that's exactly what Donald Trump is doing.
So you want to take more money?
David, you worked hard. Now you have to take your money to
wait a minute.
What right do you have to take my money? And do what you want with it?
I hate to break it to the panel, but poor people work hard too. Wait a minute. I hate to break it to the panel,
and they should pay less taxes too. I want everyone to pay less taxes.
They've been working just as hard as they've been working since the middle part of the last century.
This is why the left is collapsing.
They've been working as hard as they've been working. I think it's really fascinating that if someone sticks up for working people in this country, they're called a communist.
I want working people to have more of their money.
You want Dave Rubin to give up more of his money.
And how there was a chicken in every pot, and how Americans were so much happier in the 1950s. Well, in the 1950s, the top marginal tax rate was 90% on the top richest voters. That is how you end up getting a country in a social safety net where we have parks and swimming pools and schools and museums and safety and libraries, and the kind of country that we remembered were on one family income you could support.
But how much of my money do you need? How much of Piers' money? I know he's not fully an American, but he's probably got more money than me. How much of Piers' money do you want?
The question shouldn't be whether or not.
Joe's probably doing okay. You could probably get some of his cash.
With millionaire money. I'm telling you, David. I'm telling you, Dave, that there are poor and immiserated people in this country who signed up to vote for Donald Trump because they believe that he is right, and I believe he is right about trade policies like NAFTA being unfavorable to the American worker. He is right about that sort of thing. And frankly, Bernie Sanders running on those policies back in 2016 and 2020 is why a lot of people, independent voters, were attracted to him. And he was the #1 candidate with independent voters. And Democrats killing his campaign is exactly why they have the Trump phenomenon right now. But those kinds of policies,
how much more money do you need to get to your utopia? How much? If we took all of Elon's money and all of Bezos' money and all of Piers' money, how much? What do we need?
Canning the economy, intentionally cratering the economy, driving, like what happened in Argentina, where 50% of the population was driven into poverty, saying that that's going to be some tough times that people are going to have to endure, when that's endurance that's squarely put on the shoulders of poor and working class people in the country, is a tragedy.
Are you arguing that the economy of Argentina is not booming right now after 5 years of disaster?
Booming for whom? Throwing 50% of your population into poverty and having authoritarian crackdowns on speech and protest to prevent people from articulating their democratic right to rise up. That's exactly what's happening here in America as well. And people should be very afraid.
Pierce, I'll make one political point. there's a reason why my former Republican colleagues in the House are being told not to do in-person town halls, because Dave and Emily maybe love what's going on, but I think there is a lot of confusion out there, and a lot of regular folk, even regular Republicans, when they see headlines like 80 to 100,000 veterans losing their jobs, this is the kind of stuff that's going to hit Trump hard politically if he can't explain what it means.
Yeah, I think that's a perfectly reasonable point. I want to change topic, if I may, to Gavin Newsom. And let me start with you, Emily, on this, if I can. Gavin Newsom is now seemed to be on the sort of road to Damascus here, one of the all-time great conversions from Chief Wokey of California into a guy that I never heard any personal pronouns. What? Latinx? I didn't know once, I think, et cetera, et cetera. He even now is outraged about trans athletes in women's sport, which I don't remember him being before. He thought it was a great idea. So are we seeing now a movement by the progressive left in America on the Democrat side very sharply turning back to the center because they realize after that election shellacking that they took, that actually the progressive agenda is unelectable now in America?
Of course, and regarding Newsom specifically, I think it's clear he's trying to make his run for presidency in 28, and he realized that now that the woke wave is kind of dying down and coming to its end, that campaign policy won't work for him anymore. But what's really good about living in a digital era is that everything someone says can be fact-checked by their own history and their records. So everything that he said with Charlie Kirk during his podcast has already been debunked by his own words. So he said he's not against transgender. He is against transgenders in sports, but previously we've seen that he's protected men in women's sports. He, backtracked himself on basically half of his policies that in his own Twitter comments now we're holding against him. But the truth of the matter is that it's not just Gavin Newsom. It's a lot of the left-wingers who I would call woke, because I have no problem with you being a Democrat if you're true to your values. But this woke disease, now that Trump ended it, they want to get on the winning path. So if they see that it's not winning, they're totally going to flip-flop all of their policies, lose their credibility, lose their trustworthy reputation just to reassure that they're going to win. Now, I don't think Newsom stands a chance, especially if he'll run against Vance, but I just find it ironic that suddenly he's doing this complete 180. So in conclusion, when it comes to him, they say you can judge a parent by the way they raise their kids. So let's just equivocate that to governor. If you can judge a governor on the way that their state is running, Newsom gets a 0. DeSantis, for example, I'm a big fan of him, will get an A in my book. So I would really urge people, don't listen to Newsom's words. In fact, don't listen to anyone's words. Follow what they do, follow their actions, and follow what they put
Well,
into
I think that's always
place.
a good idea.
That's what I would urge
Yeah,
everyone
even
to
if
do.
it, especially with Donald Trump, for example, I would always say focus on what he actually does rather than what he
Great
says
example.
all day. Joe Walsh, I want to play a clip. This is of Democrats pretending to be video game characters in a loading screen with the title at the top of the video, Pick Your Fighter. Which one would you pick of this lot?
Who's your character?
Joe, I didn't think anything could get more pathetic than what I saw in Congress when Trump made his speech the other night in terms of the Democrats' reaction. That video, the idea you would back any of that lot to fight for you to open a crisp packet is beyond parody. It's a ludicrous, almost like a parody, actually. You watch it and you assume it's a spoof. It's not, it's real. They think this is exuding an air of powerful women who are going to run the world. No, they're not.
Yeah, Piers, I completely agree. I wrote a piece just before the election, and you know I don't like Trump, and I think he attacks the Constitution every day, blah, blah, blah. But I wrote a piece, and I said the worst thing about the Democrats, if Kamala Harris would win, is the Democrats will not address their fundamental problem. They've been able to run cycle after cycle on Trump is bad, Trump is bad, Trump is bad, and they've been able to win. That day is done.
Gone.
So now that day is gone.